I'm going to give you my 3 dream quarterbacks I think should be on this season of Quarterback on Netflix. And then I'm previewing the AFC and the NFC West. Let's go.
You're listening to the Running Up the Score podcast. Now here's your host, Jerry Napoleonello.
All right, Running Up the Score. I'm Jerry Napoleonello. Let's get into it. We got the Johnny Manziel Netflix Untold. We got the quarterback show that I want to get into. What is your dream 3 quarterbacks to be seen on that show for this season? And we have Hard Knocks Episode 1, and I want to get into that as well. But we got the AFC West, the NFC West, division previews. So that's coming up. But first, let's start off with it. Hard Knocks Episode 1. What did we learn from Episode 1? I will say, first of all, the first about 15 minutes is all about Aaron Rodgers. And I probably, out of the hour, I would say about 45 minutes is all about Aaron Rodgers. And rightfully so. The guy's one of the greatest. And what he brings to the Jets is unbelievable. And I've said this over and over again. Back in the offseason, I even said it before the season ended. I said, if the Jets were to get Aaron Rodgers, they are a Super Bowl contender. I said right from the beginning, right after the season ended, I said if Aaron Rodgers joins the Jets, they are a Super Bowl contender. Easy, because of their defense, their offense other than their quarterback position. I mean, you're getting Breece Hall back eventually. You have one of the top rookie wide receivers in Garrett Wilson. Then you add guys like Alan Lazard, you add Mecole Hardman, then also possibly adding Odell, I think, is going to help. This team offensively is very, very good, barring a quarterback. And now you add one of the most talented quarterbacks who still has the talent, even at 35. I mean, we saw how an old quarterback can take a talented team and bring them to a Super Bowl, i.e. Tom Brady, and he was older than Aaron Rodgers. I feel as though this team with Aaron Rodgers eventually is a Super Bowl contender. And I even think if they were to add Lamar Jackson, which is not going to happen because the Jets already came out and said that they're all set on Aaron Rodgers, whatever happens. Either way, you add Lamar Jackson, you add Aaron Rodgers, they're still a Super Bowl contender. That's how good this team is. And I mean, even their losses, Elijah Moore, not a hurt. Mike White, not a hurt. James Robinson barely even saw the field. I mean, Braxton Berrios. I think that this team, they re-signed Quincy Williams. They re-signed Solomon Thomas. This team is still solid. With Aaron Rodgers, they are a Super Bowl contender. And when you're watching Episode 1, that's the feeling that you're getting. Like, you're getting that, all right, something special is going on here in New Jersey. Yeah, I said New Jersey. How do you like that? But yeah, I mean, it was a fun watch. It really was. You have guys like Sauce. You have guys like Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall. I mean, that team altogether, they got Solomon Thomas. I mean, Quinnen Williams. The team is stacked. It really is stacked. The one thing that they were missing was a quarterback. And Aaron Rodgers is that guy. If you're going to get a quarterback, that's the guy that you want. I mean, what's the chances of getting a guy like Aaron Rodgers later in the season? Later in his career, or just a couple of years in. You look at the Tampa Bay getting Tom Brady and getting the one Super Bowl out of it. But hey, they got the Super Bowl. That's what the Jets are hoping for with Aaron Rodgers. And it was a fun watch. Like I said, it was really a fun watch. The fact that, you have Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson going at it in practice, I mean, that's only going to help each other. So that's huge. I think bringing in Nathaniel Hackett, I mean, that's a good move, especially that he's been with Aaron Rodgers for most of his career. So they got something special going on in that Jets organization. Now, are they Super Bowl bound? I've said this over and over through these previews. The AFC is stacked. It is stacked. You have Patrick Mahomes, who is 5 years into his career. Every year he's gone to the AFC Championship. And he's got 2 Super Bowls, 3 Super Bowl appearances. That's absurd. And that's who you have to go through to get to the Super Bowl if you're the Chiefs. If you're the Jets. That's absurd. Then you add to the 2 teams that are in your division already. The Miami Dolphins, who I think will be better as long as Tua can stay healthy. And the Buffalo Bills, who are known to be one of the best teams in the league. So the AFC is going to be a lot of fun this year. And you hope that this whole Hard Knocks doesn't hype up the Jets too much. That's what you're hoping. But you never know. Because I got hyped, and I'm not even a Jets fan. So, episode 1 hyped me up. I loved everything about it. Aaron Rodgers is a nut job. So this is the way it goes with Aaron Rodgers for me. I hated Aaron Rodgers when he was with the Packers, mainly because the Dallas Cowboys could not beat Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, no matter what. They just couldn't do it. So there was a hatred for him through that. But then when he was outspoken about what was going on throughout COVID, I started to gain a little bit of a likeness towards Aaron Rodgers. And it's funny because you look at it and he's hated through the media. And the black cloud that the media brings with Aaron Rodgers, it's funny. And then you watch finally, the episode of Hard Knocks, and you're like, I mean, he seems like a good dude, and he seems like a good teammate. Where is all of this coming from? So that's why it's funny to see that kind of thing. Also, another episode on Netflix. Actually, it wasn't an episode. It was a documentary. I wouldn't say movie, but it's an hour and a half. Johnny Manziel, Untold, on Netflix. Now, my initial feeling on this show, documentary, whatever, you don't realize how good Johnny Manziel was. That's the craziest thing, is you don't realize that guy was unreal. And then you add the fact, all right, now I don't condone his partying or his drinking or his drug use, anything like that. I don't condone that. I'm the total opposite of it. But the fact that he was able to do all of that, okay, and not watch tape, because it was funny when he was with the Browns, they said he never watched tape, mainly because they looked at his minutes of use on his iPad, and it was 0.
Their GM's calling me going, he doesn't watch tape. I'm like, well, he's got to watch some tape. It's like, EB, his iPad hours is 0.00.
0.
That was unreal that he was able to do everything that he did. And not that he was good with the Browns. He was not good at all. But I'm more so saying, like, with Texas A&M. Like, if he's not doing that in the NFL, he's obviously not doing it in college. So I thought it was hilarious that he was able to, go out, drink the night before, do whatever, come out the next day, put 40 up. And put 120, on his feet and another 200 in the air with like 4 touchdowns. So to me, like, you don't realize how good he was. And if he only put, just any kind of oomph into being a quarterback, he could have been really, really good. Really, really good in the NFL. So altogether, I thought the show was really good. Just the fact that he was able to just tell all. Like, it was tell all, basically. That he's selling autographs in college to make money. He, basically tells the whole lie that he told, and then just everything. I mean, the fact that he even spoke about, taking his life. Like, that's crazy. And honestly, I don't know if Johnny Manziel has, really collected himself and gotten better, like, right now. But it seemed like he was on the right track towards the end of the documentary. So you're hoping that this guy, can really get it together. In terms of the hobby, there was a lot of, documentaries or shows and stuff like that have had an emphasis on the hobby. Like, it had some kind of, basically the hobby really reflected the show. So basically, if a documentary came out about a guy, all of a sudden his card prices would go up through the roof. Then we started to see a leveling out. Like, it never had any kind of bearing on the pricing. But in terms of Johnny Manziel, I've been looking up, just because I watched the documentary and I was like, you know what, this guy was really, really good. And honestly, I wouldn't mind having, a couple of his cards, just because, I mean, it's just a collectible kind of thing. So I was looking up, a couple of his cards, and his cards are actually really, really expensive. I was looking at he has these inscriptions. So Leaf came out with these cards called Leaf inscriptions. So it'd be a card and the athlete would sign their name and then put an inscription on it. And Johnny Manziel had a couple of them. And one of the ones I offered somebody on eBay, basically, his inscription was, "I never gave a fuck and I still don't." So, that one was cool. Then there's one that says, "Johnny fucking Manziel," Johnny fucking football, I mean. Then you have one that says Money Manziel. It's cool. And it's something that I just kind of want to collect. It's one of those guys that, it's pretty cool. So in terms of the hobby, his hobby prices have gone up, and rightfully so, because you watch the show and you're like, wow, this, I don't know why I don't remember it. Like, his NFL career was horrible, and, just nothing ever good came out of the NFL career of Johnny Manziel. So that's why you don't really remember it. But his first year at Texas A&M, for what he did as a freshman, that's pretty insane. So, and then also the show Quarterback, I thought that was a great show. I liked it a lot. and I don't really, obviously I'm trying to collect, I'm trying to PC Patrick Mahomes, and I'm working on getting one of his rookie cards, and obviously they're very expensive, so I'm saving for one of those rookie cards. So, I've been following Patrick Mahomes because I wish, I don't know if I said it on the air. I know I've said it to a couple of people back then when he was still the backup to Alex Smith. I said, I remember watching, because I think at the time I was working at Sirius XM, and I remember, because we had to work the preseason games, I remember watching his preseason game, and he came in and he kind of lit it up. And I was like, you know what? This kid is actually pretty damn good. So I kept saying, like, this guy, I kept telling people, like, this guy is going to be very good. Not, obviously, I didn't think that this guy was going to be one of the greatest to ever do it. Like, basically, he's on pace to be. But I was just like, this guy's going to be good.
Get 6 touchdowns from Patrick Mahomes.
There's headlines on both these teams.
Of course.
I mean, you have Patrick Mahomes, which, I thought he should have started last year. I understand why he didn't start, but it's whatever. I liked Pat Mahomes coming out of college. He's a gunslinger. Obviously, we're seeing that now. He's got the record. 10 touchdowns in the first 2 games. I think the closest was Peyton Manning with 8.
Yeah, this is like video game numbers right now for him.
Yeah.
It's been amazing. He's throwing darts out there. And, I actually used lasers to reference it because I've seen darts thrown in the NFL. These are lasers.
Yeah.
These are probably the hardest thrown balls I think I've ever seen. I mean, the kid is efficient. He's accurate. He's throwing the ball hard, and he's very accurate with it. It's something the NFL is really going to have to, the entire NFL, rest of this NFL needs to look out. This kid is a star. He's a great player. I think Kansas City made an amazing decision to keep this kid out there. He's just got to keep himself healthy, and he's been doing a great job of that. No one's even come close to touching him. He's getting the ball out quick. He's been really effective. He knows where guys are. And I have nothing but praise right now for Patrick Mahomes. He's earned it. 10 touchdowns in 2 weeks is just unheard of. And we're talking, this isn't a situation where this guy didn't need the points. The Kansas City defense on the other side of the ball is probably one of the worst situations I've ever seen in my entire life. And this kid's making the best of it. He's doing what he can for his team. I respect it. Very, very, very well done. And
I wish I was in the hobby at the time, because I'm like, I would have been all over his cards, because right now I'm all over Matt Corral. I am all over Dorian Thompson Robinson. Who else am I on? I do like Anthony Richardson a lot, and I'm trying in the process to start getting into Caleb Williams. I'm pissed because at the time I ended up opening up a box or 2 boxes of Bowman Chrome University, or Bowman University Chrome, and I ended up, because at the time they had the bounties out for the 1-of-1 Bryce Young, the 1-of-1, I think it was the 1-of-1 CJ Stroud, and then the 1-of-1 Caleb Williams. And I ended up in the 2 boxes, I ended up pulling, actually out of 1 box, I pulled 2 Caleb Williams autographs. And I just, at the time, I was just like, you know what, I might as well strike while the iron's hot, and I sold both of them right away. I got a decent amount for them, but now I kind of look back at it and I'm like, I'm looking at some of these, the reports coming out about Caleb Williams, basically saying that this is the best QB prospect since Andrew Luck. And Andrew Luck was probably the best quarterback prospect. Basically what they were talking about leading into the NFL that basically ever you could think of. So the quarterback show, I mean, it followed Marcus Mariota, it followed Kirk Cousins, and it followed Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes ends up winning the Super Bowl. great guy to have on the show, and I know a lot of people were kind of indifferent about him. Now, looking at this season, you're starting to see a lot of some of these players rejecting the show. Now, I kind of basically what I wanted to get into is just the dream 3. Like, who would you want from this year to be on that show? And honestly, I would love for Trevor Lawrence to be on it, although Trevor Lawrence did reject it, so he's out. I would also love for it to be, I would like to see I'd like to see Dak. I think the show would actually only help Dak, because I think people just look at him as, he's a quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. I don't like him. That's how it is. And it's hilarious because, he did have a bad season last year. I will say that. Yes, it was a bad season. He had 15 interceptions. Was tied for the most in the league. But that's not the kind of quarterback that he is. And that's why I laugh when people are like, oh, well, he's terrible. Oh, he's an interception machine. If you're saying he's an interception machine, if you're saying Dak Prescott is an interception machine, you don't know football. You don't know football and you don't watch football. Because Dak Prescott is in the top 10 of interception ratio. So it's hilarious that, it's only because he has a star on the side of his helmet. And it was the same thing with Tony Romo as well. People love to hate the Dallas Cowboys. With the Dallas Cowboys, you have you absolutely love them or you absolutely hate them. So no matter what, people are going to look at, they're going to cherry pick videos on social media, which are funny altogether because people are only posting the videos of his interceptions. That's the only thing that you're going to see. You're never going to see, unless you're following the Dallas Cowboys, you're never going to see anything good coming from Dak Prescott. Then you have the other idiot, LaShawn McCoy, who goes to he went to training camp finally because he's been talking all this smack about the Dallas Cowboys. He's been doing it since last year. He talks out of his ass. That's the funniest thing. He talks out of his ass, and he did it on national television. Because I think he was on one of the shows. I don't know if it was The Herd or it was the Rich Eisen show, but they asked him about being at training camp with the Dallas Cowboys, and he said that they looked really good. They looked, amazing. They looked like a top 3 roster in the league. And then he goes, Tony Pollard looked great.
He'll be even more efficient this year, and I think he'll have a better offense. I think the Cowboys will struggle, even though, and being at that camp, I've noticed so fast how talented that group is on offense and on defense.
No, that defensive group, that's a top 4.
Oh, my God.
Dudes everywhere. Length, speed. Everywhere.
Yes. And on offense. I mean, you bring Brandon Cooks over there as your number 2 receiver, like that's really, really good. Tony Pollard, he looks good.
Okay, he does.
Right? And then all-pro receiver and CeeDee Lamb, you have everything you need there, right? With a solid offensive line. Now, granted, we'll see what happens with Zach Martin, but overall, that's a talented offense.
Okay. So
the funny thing about that was Tony Pollard wasn't on the field when LaShawn McCoy was there. So you're lying on national television. So the fact that people listen to LaShawn McCoy is hilarious. But I think the show would help Dak just in the light of to see his everyday motions and to see what he does on a daily basis. I think people would start to change their mind about it with Dak Prescott because he does a lot. And he's one of the best leaders because, of course, you see the one video with Trayvon Diggs Tell him to shut his bitch ass up. I mean, honestly, did nobody watch? First off, does nobody watch Hard Knocks? A. Does nobody watch the show on Amazon that follows the team for the whole season? B. And C. Do you not see any other videos from practices? Players like to talk shit. If you played a sport, whether it be in high school, college, whatever it is, maybe even on the pro level, you talk shit. Athletes like to talk shit. Period. That's what they did. They were talking shit to each other. But again, it's the Dallas Cowboys. And it's Dak Prescott, so we're going to make a big deal about it. Because 3 days prior to that, Travis Kelce punches one of his teammates. You hear maybe a 5-minute story about it. Dak Prescott and Trayvon Diggs getting into it, you hear for a week straight. Because that's what people want to hear. They want to hear that there's things going on that are not good for the Dallas Cowboys. People know what, they know what baits people to click. It's the Dallas Cowboys and something bad. That's why whenever you see a football player that got into trouble, but has played for 5 different teams, 3 different teams, but one of those teams with the Dallas Cowboys, they're always gonna cherry pick the Dallas Cowboys out of that. They're always gonna say former Dallas Cowboys blank got arrested for this. That's all. But meanwhile, their last team not even mentioned. Say it's a Washington Commander, yet he played for the Dallas Cowboys 2 teams ago. He gets in trouble. Not former Washington Commander. No. You're going to see former Dallas Cowboy. It's hilarious. That's what people do. People know what gets the clicks. People know what gets the views. It's the Dallas Cowboys. And that's why I laugh when people say this isn't America's team. 7-point-something billion. That's what they're worth. Whatever it was. I don't know the exact number. But they're number 1. That's the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are clickbait for everybody. So, yes, I'd like to see Dak in it, but I'm trying to think of another quarterback. I would love to see Desmond Ridder be on it. Josh Allen would be one of those guys that I would love to see on it. I mean, I would love to see Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence, and Joe Burrow. That would be this year. That would be great. I mean, or even Justin Herbert. I mean, that would be, if we were to do Burrow, Josh Allen, and Justin Herbert, that'd be insane. Insane. So those are my dream quarterbacks for the quarterback show on Netflix. What are yours? Leave it in the comments. Tweet it at me. DM me on Instagram. Comment on on TikTok. Whatever it is, I want to hear what your dream quarterbacks are for the quarterback show on Netflix. Now let's move on.
Running up the score NFL preview. AFC West.
We'll start off with
Los Angeles Chargers. Off-season grade.
We're going to give them a B. As the Chargers, prepare for, life with a very, very expensive quarterback. They were kind of quiet, obviously, on the free agent front because you're spending this kind of money on your quarterback. So it's going to be, a little tight when it comes to money to spend anywhere else. But bringing back right tackle Trey Pipkins on a 3-year deal was huge. The most significant offseason transaction, though, when we're talking about the Chargers, was bringing in Kellen Moore. I listen, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. I've watched every Dallas Cowboys game since the late 90s because I was a little young. I've watched Kellen Moore as an offensive coordinator for his whole career with the Dallas Cowboys. I think Kellen Moore can be something special. With the Dallas Cowboys, he would show signs. And that's the thing. Like, you know, a lot of people were kind of on the fence with Kellen Moore because, you know, you can see, like, all right, wow, Kellen Moore could be one of the best offensive coordinators in the league. And then all of a sudden, the next drive or the next game, you're like, what happened to it? You know, we just saw unbelievable plays that we never saw before. And now we're back to the same old plays. Like, what's going on? Why do we look so stagnant? And that was my issue with Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore, it would just be like, all right, we're going to run the ball. And they would run the ball twice, and they wouldn't gain any yards. And then it was like, all right, well, the run's not working. Let's go to the pass. And he would just go, like, that was the thing. If something didn't work, he just went right away from it. And especially when it comes to the run game, like, you have to, like, keep it going. Like, that's, especially with the Dallas Cowboys, they're formed to be a running team. So that was just one of the issues that I had with him. You know, altogether, I think he could be a really, really good offensive coordinator for the Chargers. A young team, young quarterback, a special quarterback, to really be honest. I think he could be a special offensive coordinator, and I think he might take the Chargers up a notch. You know, I think this team, the Chargers, and I've said it for the last 2 years, this team is special, or at least they can be special. But it's just one game that you're looking at the team and you're like, holy crap, this is a dangerous team. And then the next week they fall flat on their face and you're like, what the hell happened? So that's why, like, I'm a little worried in terms of Kellen Moore, in terms of that fact. Like, this team is already inconsistent, and then I feel like Kellen Moore is a little inconsistent, to be honest. But I think he has more of the reins with the Chargers. I don't think he really had that much of control on what he called with the Dallas Cowboys. So that's why I'm interested to see. But I think it was a good move. It was probably the best move that they made in the offseason.
NFL Draft Recap.
I'm going to give them a B. The Chargers didn't do anything spectacular, but added a couple of solid players who should contribute this year. Linebacker help with Tuli Tuipulotu and Diane Henley. And then you add Quentin Johnston, who already in camp has been making big plays and is one of, if not the number one target for Justin Herbert. So his after-the-catch ability, you know, already for a team that was kind of missing that over the past couple of years, his work a little suspect at the catch point, but he has the size and the frame to be a force definitely in that area if he works on it.
Free agency recap.
C-. It's been, as I said before, a quiet offseason for the Chargers after spending a lot last year and then, giving that contract to Justin Herbert. Eric Kendricks is really their only addition and obviously will be the starting linebacker. So that was a good move. But altogether, they really didn't do much. So, being that they only signed one guy, I gave him a C-.
Will they make the playoffs?
Yes, that's definite this year.
Contender or pretender?
I really do think they're a contender because I felt like they were a contender the last 2 years, but they just keep falling on their face. So that's that.
2023 season outlook.
I'm expecting them to be exactly what I thought they should be. I think they're going to be that team that's going to be a force to be reckoned with. I think that their offense, just Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert is a special quarterback. He really is. He has the tools to be one of the best. And I think this year he's going to show that on a consistent level. I think the Chargers are going to show it on a consistent level. Because if they don't, I can tell you right now, Brandon Staley's out. Because he was already 1 foot out this offseason. Because it's getting to that point where, how much more can you really take in terms of the Chargers and dealing with Brandon Staley? Because a lot of the times last year, it felt like he was outcoached in a lot of games. So I'm expecting this year for them to be better.
What are the odds?
Over under 9.5 wins. I like them at 9 wins. This is going to put them in the second place spot in the AFC West. Plus 290 to win the division. Plus 1,300 to win the AFC. That's 7th best. And minus 105 to make the playoffs. That's 15th best.
Denver Broncos. Off-season grade.
I am going to give them an A-. Obviously, the biggest news of the offseason was them trading to pick up head coach Sean Payton from the New Orleans Saints. This team really was a mess last year. It really, really was. Because we were, as we've said over and over again, we were expecting the AFC West to be undoubtedly the best division in the league, because you had a team like the Chiefs, who are the Chiefs, a team like the Chargers, who are a special, talented young team, and then you had the Denver Broncos, who added a Super Bowl winning quarterback, one of the best in the league, or so we thought going into that season, and just a special offense as well, because they already had a good defense. Then you add Russell Wilson to a team that has Jerry Jeudy, and even Javonte Williams. This team felt like it was going to be a lot better. This division felt like it was going to be a lot better, and it just wasn't. It wasn't at all. They were terrible. Russell Wilson was terrible. The unfortunate thing about getting Sean Payton was that obviously they lose a first-round pick, but that's what you get for getting a quarterback, a head coach of the stature of Sean Payton. But their biggest offseason move was getting Sean Payton. So there you go.
NFL draft recap.
I'm going to give them a B+ after, obviously not having a first-round pick. Denver made some solid picks, even going by their situation. Marvin Mims has a chance to make an impact this year. Unfortunately, that kind of means the departure of somebody, in that wide receiver room. And they did address the defense pretty well with Drew Sanders and Riley Moss.
Free agency recap.
I'm going to give them an A. Now, obviously, it kind of seems like the Denver Broncos fixed their problems. Sean Payton, obviously a big upgrade over Nathaniel Hackett. And then they brought in some offensive linemen to fill the void. Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers were brought in, and it'll give Russell Wilson probably a little bit better of a fighting chance this year. So they also did do a good job bolstering up the defensive front that had a lot of issues again last year. The loss of Draymond Jones hurts, but Zach Allen was signed to help fortify that group.
Will they make the playoffs?
This team, to me, is more of a bubble team because it's contingent on what Russell Wilson we're going to see this season. Because if we see the Russell Wilson that we saw last year, it's going to be a rough season again for the Denver Broncos. And at what point do they look for another quarterback? There's going to be guys out there, because you look at the situation that's going on in San Francisco. Trey Lance is going to have to go somewhere if he's not the starter. You can't take a guy in the first round and the number 3 pick and just have him on the bench. It can't happen. So there's going to be guys out there if Denver is having problems with Russell Wilson. You hope to either, if you're going to see it, you hope to see it early rather than later.
Contender or pretender?
I have them, again, another on-the-fence team. They could be a decent team, but they could also be a very bad team. So that's exactly, what that's the unfortunate thing with the Broncos.
2023 season outlook.
Just exactly that. This team is just, they can be very good. They can be very good if Russell Wilson plays to his capabilities. This team can be very good if they all play to their capabilities. It's just, to me, first off, they're in a very rough division. They are in the AFC, which is a very rough conference. And they're already, I really do have them as as the third place team in this division.
What are the odds?
So their over-under is 8.5. I like them at 8. To win the division, they're plus 600. That's third best. They're plus 3,000 to win the AFC. That's 11th best. And they're plus 186 to make the playoffs. That's 23rd. So Vegas doesn't even think that they're going to make the playoffs. So that's there.
Kansas City Chiefs. Off-season grade.
A B. Obviously, navigating the salary cap with the huge contracts that they have with Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones is not easy. But the Chiefs made it work. So that's where, this team just makes it work, basically.
NFL draft recap.
In the draft, the Chiefs, they weren't flashy. They didn't do anything sexy with their first pick. But they targeted some fascinating projects, to say the least. Rashee Rice has some nice tape. I will say that at SMU, and now goes to, obviously, Andy Reid to see what he can really become on the NFL level, while Wanya Morris represents the third project, I guess. Again, a project, you should say, tackle the team has drafted in recent years. So these are interesting guys. Their draft, it was interesting to see what they're going to do and what they'll turn out to be in the coming years.
Free agency recap.
B-. They elected to let go of Orlando Brown, and they ended up replacing him with Jawan Taylor, Jawan Taylor is a very, very good tackle. That cost them $20 million a year. He's only ever really played right tackle, which initially he was supposed to play on the left side, but the team has signed Donovan Smith and will likely keep Taylor on the right side, where he's a very, very, very good pass blocker. Charles Omenihu, safety Mike Edwards, and linebacker Drew Tranquill are all very, very good additions who can play extensively this year.
Will they make the playoffs?
That is the biggest joke of a question that you can ask when it comes to the Chiefs. The Chiefs will make the playoffs. If they didn't, then something horribly went wrong with Patrick Mahomes, and that's the only way that they missed the playoffs.
Contender or pretender?
They are the contender. When you say contender, you think of the Kansas City Chiefs. That's exactly what you're thinking of.
2023 season outlook.
You're expecting an AFC Championship game to be in Kansas City, hopefully, at least for the Kansas City, Kansas City's sake. And you're just, what team is going to be trying to knock them off? Is it going to be the Bills? Is it going to be the Bengals? Is it going to be the Jets? Is it going to be the Chargers? That's the thing. It's the Chiefs are the benchmark. Who's going to be able to knock them off? And until that happens, That's what you're expecting every season when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs.
What are the odds?
Over under 11.5. And I like them at 12, so I'm going to say over. Then they are minus 180 to win the AFC West. That's first, obviously. They are plus 350 to win the AFC. That's first. And they are minus 500 to make the playoffs. That is also first.
Las Vegas Raiders. Off-season grade
is a C minus. The Raiders made some earth-shattering moves this offseason by moving on from Derek Carr in favor of Jimmy G, which is obviously a downgrade at the quarterback position. Then they also got rid of Darren Waller, but they brought in Jacoby Myers. It's very odd to see what they're doing this offseason. So yeah, that's why they're getting a C minus.
NFL draft recap.
In A, they did trade away, as I said, Darren Waller to the Giants before filling that space with Michael Mayer, which Michael Mayer is one of, if not the best tight end out of the draft. They took Tyree Wilson that fills the spot of Chandler Jones. But between the draft and free agency, the Raiders were one of the most active, but it's still, up in the air whether they're better or not.
Free agency recap.
C+, the biggest move that, happened really was under center when they released Derek Carr and then brought in Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know why. I really don't know why. Garoppolo has, I guess some kind of familiarity with Josh McDaniels' offense, obviously with their days in New England. But it's still like, does this even put them in any kind of contention, in the AFC West, let alone, the AFC altogether? Jacoby Myers was a solid addition, to be number 2 to Devontae Adams. But who knows if Devontae Adams is actually going to be staying here. They brought in O.J. Howard and Austin Hooper. And who knows what's going on with Josh Jacobs? You don't know.
Will they make the playoffs?
No.
Contender or pretender?
They are a pretender.
2023 season outlook.
I'm expecting this to be a very, very rough season for the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, really rough. Especially if this whole thing with Josh Jacobs continues, and if he starts missing games. Devontae Adams, I think, is going to be on his way out. It's... I think Derek Carr is actually a good quarterback. So I don't know why moving on from him was, deemed a good move for the Raiders. I think the Saints got better, getting Derek Carr. So that's that. But, altogether, I laugh when it comes down to this. So
what are the odds?
Over under wins 6.5. I say under. Will they make the playoffs? Their numbers are plus 390. Their numbers to win the AFC is plus 5,500, which is 13th best. And then to win the division is that's out of the question. That's 1,700.
NFC West. Seattle Seahawks. Off-season grade.
We give them an A. Seattle deserves credit, obviously, for what they did with Geno Smith, obviously bringing him back in. But just the fact that they were able to do what they did last year with Geno Smith. And what Geno Smith was able to do last year with a team that, was thought to be in a rebuild because of, getting rid of Russell Wilson. So the fact that they played well, I mean, what they did was that came out of nowhere. You got to give them credit.
NFL draft recap.
A. With their top 2 picks, the draft, the Seahawks drafted the number 1 cornerback and number 1 receiver in Devin Witherspoon and Jackson Smith-Njigba, respectively. Running back Zach Charbonnet in the second round raised eyebrows, given they have obviously K9. But now the team has one of the better, backfields, especially if, Zach Charbonnet actually plays very well. This could be one of the best, if not the best, running back tandem.
Free agency recap.
B+, the Seahawks, obviously enjoyed the best free agents period of the teams in the NFC West. They made some key signings to improve the offensive line and front seven. Evan Brown was added to replace the retired Austin Blythe, which kind of seems like an upgrade, obviously. However, the biggest signings were Draymond Jones and Bobby Wagner to bolster that middle of the defense. Wagner's old, but it happens to be coming. He happens to be coming off of his best year, or at least coming off a great year, to be honest with you. And he's familiar with the Seahawks, basically. So it was a good move. It also should be noted that the Seahawks didn't lose anyone of significance that they didn't replace. Blythe, obviously, some defensive linemen, and linebacker Cody Barton all departed, but Seahawks, they found, substitutes, and actually a lot of them are upgrades. So that was, I commend them for what they did in free agency.
Will they make the playoffs?
I think they actually will this year. I think it's going to be a fun year for Seattle again, but, is Geno Smith going to be back to what he was last year?
Contender or pretender?
I have them as a contender, as in a playoff team. So, yes, I think they're going to make the playoffs.
2023 season outlook.
The biggest question surrounding this team is, can Geno Smith replicate his first half? They started 6-3. They were surprising in that first half. Then Seattle went 3-5 the rest of the way. And Geno threw 7 interceptions of his 11 in those final 11 games, and another one in the playoffs. So Geno, along with Pete Carroll, will try to get, a full season of that first half that they had of Geno Smith and the Seahawks, and that's what they're hoping.
What are the odds?
Over under 8.5 wins. I have them at 9. I'll give them a 9-8 season again, and I have them sneaking into the playoffs. Plus 200 to win the division, plus 1,300 to win the NFC, which is 6th best, and minus 122 to make the playoffs, which is 12th best.
Los Angeles Rams. Off-season grade.
C. There was a sigh of relief, a little bit of that relief that Sean McVay did not move on, like a lot of people thought he was going to. He stuck around. They made some tough personnel decisions. The Rams lost a lot of key players. Jalen Ramsey, Bobby Wagner, Nick Scott, Leonard Floyd. They're looking to find. It's like, I don't know. They were just an older team. Like, this is what we expected. They went on that little tear to win the Super Bowl. They went on a signing spree, spent all this money on all these kind of veteran type of players, and now, like, this is what you're seeing. You're going to be getting rid of those guys because either they're retiring or they're just old now, and that's what you're seeing. They're left with Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford, and Aaron Donald, and I don't see Matt Stafford playing past this year, to be honest with you. I think this is going to be his last year, but they have a lot of inexperienced players and rookies around them that it's like, Cooper Kupp was hurt all year last year. Matt Stafford was hurt all year last year, ended up missing most of the season. It's just, this is what you get. You traded, a couple of years for that 1 year to win the Super Bowl. They won the Super Bowl, so you got to commend them for that. But that's what you get. That's what you get. It's the same thing that happened with Seattle. It was going to get to a point where Seattle was going to have to start dishing out a lot of money. Therefore, they were going to have to get rid of a bunch of people. And they did. And look what happened.
NFL Draft Recap.
A-. Their biggest move in free agency was trading away Jalen Ramsey, and not for a great haul in return, but it left the team with a difficult draft, needing a lot of contributors despite no first-round selection. They ended up drafting 14 times, and several of those players should see, significant playing time this year. Steve Avila could be a day one starting guard, while Byron Young and Kobe Turner should both feature plenty on the defensive line right away. Edge rusher Nick Hampton, receiver Puka Nacua, and cornerback Travius Hodges-Tomlinson could all see snaps sooner rather than later. This is what we're saying. The team is going to have to play a lot of these younger guys because that's the best you got. And they added Stetson Bennett, but Stetson Bennett is an older guy already. He was an older college player. So yes, he won back-to-back championships, but is he going to be the guy to take over for Matt Stafford next year? I don't know. That's obviously that's up for debate.
Free agency recap.
D+. None of the players that the Rams added or retained in free agency or a trade feel like big pieces. They're just counting on Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Aaron Donald returning to full health and hopefully getting an improved performance from last year.
Will they make the playoffs?
No.
Contender or pretender?
They are a pretender because they are a very aging team. They're old or they're really, really young that they're just not going to make that big of a difference.
2023 season outlook.
Although this team this year may surpass the worst season by a defending Super Bowl champion with 5 wins, I don't think it'll really be by much. Some may say it's a full rebuild. It's not a full rebuild in LA, but just a remodel. But sometimes I feel a remodel is worse because you're not good enough to compete for a Super Bowl, which they aren't, but you won't be as bad as the worst team. So then you just kind of miss out on the higher draft picks, aka the top 2 quarterbacks, which they'll end up needing. They have some great players in Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, and Matthew Stafford. Injuries played a huge role last year, but still this team is in need of a full rebuild rather than a remodel.
What are the odds?
Over-under is 6.5 wins. I have them at 6 wins. Plus 1,000 to win the division, plus 2,500 to win the NFC, which is 14th best, and plus 285 to make the playoffs, which is 26th best.
Arizona Cardinals.
Kyler Murray may not even start this season, let alone end up maybe even playing the season. We have no idea. They have a new coach, new GM. They got rid of DeAndre Hopkins. There's questions still surrounding Budda Baker. Marlon Mack just tore his Achilles, so he's out for the season. So a lot of rough things are happening in Arizona.
Off-season grade.
B-. As I said, new regime in Arizona went about things in a very different way to the old one, and through free agency was a little low on star power or impact signings. The Cardinals made up for it with a very, very good draft, and we'll talk about that now.
NFL Draft Recap.
B+. They exploited Houston's desperation to trade back into the first round and still picked up a player that they wanted in Paris Johnson. While acquiring a first-round pick next year as part of that deal, the next 3 picks they had on day 2 should each contribute. They have Clayton Tune. He's been one of the most accurate passers in the nation over the past couple of years. Arizona may not see the biggest impact from this offseason, but they set themselves up, for the future, for this franchise.
Free agency recap.
I give them a C. Arizona's roster still has a very, very big issue. A lot of the players the Cardinals lost are either retirees or players who still have not signed elsewhere. But seeing both Zach Allen and Byron Murphy leave the building, left Jonathan Gannon, the new coach, with a defense that is almost entirely, gone of all of its talent, except for Budda Baker. And they might even lose him as well. Gannon brought in Kaiser White along with him from Philadelphia, as well as wide receiver Zach Pascal, who most of the other additions and retentions here are not high impact players. This is a team that badly needs to stockpile draft picks and think about how best to surround Kyler Murray, who, like I said, is probably going to miss a lot of it. It's just, to me, it's kind of, they got to look at themselves in the mirror. Like, is Kyler Murray really the guy? That's the question.
Will they make the playoffs?
No, not even close.
Contender or pretender?
Pretender, and honestly, they could be in the running for Caleb Williams. That's why I think you should look yourself in the mirror and say, is Kyler Murray the guy?
2023 season outlook.
I'm expecting a rough season, to say the least. The unknown surrounding Kyler Murray is a huge black cloud hanging over this team. Over an already rough season to begin with, but missing, obviously, your franchise quarterback and arguably your best player on this team, which isn't really saying much, makes it worse. This team will be in the running for Caleb Williams, as I said. But the biggest question, is, are they 100% in on Kyler Murray? Because obviously with everything that we've been hearing about Caleb Williams, the Cardinals may end up with 2 of the top 3 picks this upcoming season, this upcoming draft. Obviously because one of them is the Texans' first-round pick. So that's, it's going to be interesting.
What are the odds?
Over under 4.5 wins. I have them at 4. Plus 2,700 to win the division. Plus 8,500 to win the NFC, which is 16th best. And plus 980 to make the playoffs. That is last.
San Francisco 49ers.
Brock Purdy listed as quarterback 1 in the unofficial depth chart. Trey Lance, the rumors have begun. So that's issue, and that's something to actually keep our eye on.
Off-season grade.
C, with not only 1 but 2 of their quarterbacks on rookie contracts. The 49ers could afford to keep spending money despite minimal draft capital. Spending, obviously, they did. The addition of Javon Hargrave, he'll be counted on to basically take over for what Charles Omenihu, what they lost with Charles Omenihu and Saman Ebikon in the pass rush. Jimmy Ward also gone. The 49ers shown that they can develop some offensive linemen, and appears that they may be banking on that because they lost Mike McGlinchey and Daniel Bruskill. So that's that.
NFL draft recap.
C+ in this draft. It's difficult to argue that anything the 49ers did was a result of a good process. Basically, they reached on all of their picks according to PFF. So that's also interesting. And they took a kicker in the third round.
Free agency recap.
C+. They realized exactly how much talent had actually walked out. They have a replacement or 2 for Garoppolo in obviously Brock Purdy and Trey Lance. They brought in Feliciano to replace Brunskill and Oliver to hopefully replace Mosley. Losing Omenihu, Emicon, and Willis is hopefully mitigated by the addition of Hargrave, which Javon Hargrave is very, very good. But one guy replacing, 3 guys is... Then, you look at the back end, Al-Shazir, Ward, being the guys that they did lose, trying to find replacements for that was hard, and they really didn't find that. So that's why it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this defense because they were one of the best defenses, in the league.
Will they make the playoffs?
Yes.
Contender or pretender?
Will they be a contender? Yes. It's going to be interesting because a lot of people are really high on San Francisco this year. Obviously from what they've been, but they did lose a lot. So it's going to be interesting.
2023 season outlook.
I'm expecting the 49ers to be one of those teams, one of the best teams in the NFC this year. But obviously they did lose a lot on their defensive side of the ball, which was their best part of their team. Will they be the same defense that they've been? That's kind of that's remained to be seen. But of course, everyone's eyes will be on the QB carousel that they have going on. If Purdy is QB1, I think they have to move on from Trey. I think you have to. As I said before, this is a number 3 pick. I think you have to move on from him. And the newest rumors are Tampa Bay, Washington, and Atlanta. So be on the lookout for that.
What are the odds?
Over under 10.5 wins. I have them at 11. Minus 165 to win the division. Plus 400 to win the NFC, which is second best. Minus 430 to make the playoffs. That is second best.
Around the hobby.
I really want to get into this. Arch Manning, which is Eli and Peyton's nephew, he is going to be coming into college. He's going to be starting in college these next couple of years. His 1-of-1 card just sold with Panini. He signed a deal with Panini. They came out with his 1-of-1. They auctioned it, and it sold for $102,500. The most expensive Peyton Manning card, the 1998 playoff contender PSA 10 auto, that sold for $71,998. And then the most expensive Eli card, 2006 Ultimate Collection Game Jersey Auto Logo Patch, BGS 9, sold for $5,848. So he's already outsold both of his uncles, and he hasn't even played an NFL game yet. That's the funny thing. That's interesting. Panini and Fanatics have been suing each other back and forth. I think what's interesting about this now, just there was so many things to be read with this whole thing. But basically, Panini sued Fanatics because they feel as though Fanatics, when they do take over the NBA and the NFL rights, they feel as though they're starting a monopoly. But then Fanatics came back and countersued them basically by saying, you had that, you did that, what is the difference from what we're doing? So I'm going to try to find exactly to shorten this up. Supposedly, it mainly comes from Fanatics and Panini allegedly had an agreement in place to terminate Panini's licenses early. This would have allowed Fanatics to take NBA and NFL cards starting in July. Fanatics claims that Panini purposely slowed the deal in bad faith, causing tens of millions of losses for Fanatics. The lawsuit read, Panini dragged out the early termination negotiations in bad faith by slow-walking negotiations for several months and ultimately trying to pass off knowingly inflated earnings projections that translated to unreasonable high early termination fee. It continues because of Panini's deficit. Fanatics Collectibles spent tens of millions of dollars paying lawyers, accountants, and other professionals for their advice, negotiation, preparation, and diligence related to the transaction. All the while, Panini knew early termination would never happen because Panini would never be willing to agree to a termination fee that matched its own accurate real-world earnings projections. And here's the craziest part of this is Fanatics eventually learned through private discussions with the CEO of Panini America that Panini itself was relying on a different, materially lower set of accurate, updated figures for its own internal use while still feeding Fanatics the pumped-up projections to string the negotiations along. So that is why there's this whole big thing happening, and this is, why Fanatics ended up countersuing Panini. But there's some things that, you could really, that were interesting when you're looking into this whole thing. We won't have any new releases, obviously, this week, but we'll have them next week. But this was interesting to see in this whole thing. Fanatics said they intend to eliminate redemptions entirely over time except in limited situations. So not only will this make the box breaking experience better, but you have those chances where you end up opening up a later like an earlier box, like say, obviously we're 2023 now, say you open up a box of 2020, you pull a redemption, that redemption is expired. So now Panini would have to send you a different card. You're not going to get that card. So I think one of the redemptions in 2020 was a Joe Burrow. So if you pull a Joe Burrow RPA, say out of National Treasures, and it's a redemption, it's expired, because you're already 3 years out of that. So that's what makes some of these boxes, yes, a lot of these boxes are crazy money, but it does hurt the value of the box a little bit. So now you got to really think, if there's no redemptions, it's going to make the value of the box kind of stay, and it kind of makes it fun. Box breaking, I think it'll just make the experience better. Also, another thing that I saw through Eric Whiteback, that there was a card that showed up in the lawsuit, and it was a Whitey Ford card out of, I guess it was, it had to be Panini. So it was interesting because obviously Whitey Ford retired in 1967, but it was a Majestic patch. So he said Majestic didn't start making MLB jerseys until 1982. Yet Panini said that the relic on the back of the card was game used, which is obviously impossible. So this is just one of the many reasons Panini lied about some of the relics on cards, which to a point, like I started reading some of the comments, and someone said that it could be an old timers patch, because the Yankees do the old timers day. So, they're not wearing older jerseys. Like if, back then, say, just say in 1967 when he retired, they had Nike. Then in 1982, Majestic took over. So if the Old Timers Day is in 1982, Whitey Ford wouldn't be wearing a Nike jersey that he wore in 1967. He'd be wearing a Majestic jersey. So that's something that you could look into. Another thing was just like, cause like if you read some of the backs of some of the patches, it'll say player worn. But what Panini and, Topps and whatever they do, when it comes to player worn, it's literally they give the guy the jersey, have him wear it for 2 seconds, then take it off, and then they cut it up and make it into patches. And that's considered player worn. So I think I think what Topps should be doing, like Fanatics and Topps should be doing, is if it is game used, put down the game that it was used in, and that would make it even more interesting, and that would even make it even better in terms of value too, because you take a jersey from a big game of that player, I mean the value would be unbelievable. So there's that. But again, there's no releases, so we'll be back next week with some more hobby talk and new releases. But that will do it for the AFC West and the NFC West. I'm Jerry. Be breezy.
Be breezy.
And it is all over! You've been listening to Running Up the Score. We run up the score on Sports Radio.